Good night, good morning, good afternoon. This is a global hello for all the people around the planet, including the aliens. Welcome to Unbreakable Life with Glory, the bilingual podcast where we talk about depression, anxiety, PTSD, natural way, holistic way to always make you feel better. And this is Gloria Goldberg. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I just show up sometimes in times that is not my podcast only always is on Wednesday mornings or Wednesday afternoons, but sometimes, like I always said, I practice the present, so I go with the flow. And if my guests only can do it on Tuesday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I always gonna do it because that is the mission of life. There's mission of life. Don't have time, don't have days. It's just to do it in the moment that we need to do it. So I see that there's a lot of new people here. I'm so happy and excited to have all these people watching me and my show. So I want to tell you a little bit about me. I am from Colombia. It was hard for me to say this a long time ago, but I'm from Colombia. I'm survivor from a kidnap situation. I was held in captivity for 90 days in the dark, and that was a big, huge trauma in my life that make me to feel all kind of emotions from depression, anxiety, and of course the PTSD. Some when you go through this tremendous traumas, like mine, when you came out from the trauma, you came out more. Um, you auto kidnap yourself, and I was auto kidnap myself for many many years. I was in fear all the time, not trusting people. And yes, I went for a lot of therapy, a lot of healing, a lot of work from me, but it took me a long time to discover that transformation, that healing. When I get out from that kidnap, I was lost and afraid, and that reflects in everything I do, in my relationships and in my job and everything. And one day I said I have to work this fear because I cannot live like this way. Living in fear is the most hard moments in my life. Like if I work with people, I always like not trusting people and always overlooking what other people do. And it's not the people fault. It was always my fault because I had I had these trust issues. 4 years ago, I had my first panic attack. I didn't know what was PTSD, and something triggers me and I react in a panic attack. So I have to also to overcome that. So 3 years ago, I was sitting down, very, very like sad and like what I'm gonna do with this story that I have. I've been doing a lot of transformation, a lot of work, but I still working some stuff because it's something that never ends when you keep working in yourself. And 3 years ago, I said, I'm going to start talking about depression, anxiety, PTSD. And then I'm going to start working with the fear of talking, the fear to say where I'm from, and talking about this story about my kidnap. I couldn't do it. In 3 years and a half, my coach, Kia Baker, said to me, Gloria, you need to say your story and you need to be able to overcome all this fear, so for you to help other people that are in the same situation. And that's what I did. In the beginning, I didn't want to show my face. I was only wanted to do it my podcast behind the microphone, and that's it. And then 6 months later, I start saying, you know what, it's time for me to put my face. It's time to for me to hug the fear and say, you know what, we need fear, but not for everything. And that's what I'm doing today. I've been interviewing like almost 300 people around the world, asking this question: what is depression? What is anxiety? How you feel? How you dealing? Plus, I have two experience in my family that die for depression. One, she suicide. She suicide in a very terrible way. And my second one, she died from chronic depression. And it's because my family was not well educated about what was depression and what was anxiety. Even they knew I was depressed and anxiety, but they didn't know very well until I have to say, you know what, it's time for me to talk about it and help people and help families to understand people with depression and anxiety. Because long time ago, you cannot talk about depression and anxiety because you was they call you you're unstable, you're not gonna find a man to love you or a partner to love you, you will not be able to work because people think you're like that. And I'm a living proof that I'm a successful woman. Yes, I have moments of depression, very heavy depression, and I get out from that dark moment. And I always understand that the dark moments are for you to go to the light and to be able to transform and teach all these emotions to people. So today I have a very beautiful and special guest. We're going to go very deep today. It's a subject that also touched my heart because she went into an experience that also one of my member of my family went through. And when she told me this story, I said, okay, this is the first time I'm going to talk about this, but I'm going to let her to talk about what happens to her. So who is her? She is Nancy Deborah Barrows. She is a life coach, and is one of the top 50 people, influence people, impactful people from Linden Link. So let's welcome her to Unbreakable Life with Glory, the bilingual podcast. Hi,
Hello.
Nancy.
Hello. I hearing your story, I get chills every time. Like I hashtag warrior woman I put in the comments. It's so inspiring.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I this has been a moment of transformation for me to be able to be here to tell the story. And because when they kidnapped, in my case, when they kidnapped me, I didn't know who kidnapped me, and I never saw the faces of the kidnappers. So still today, after 25 years, I don't know who it was. So every time I was going to Colombia, I was freaking out. And now, last month, I went to Colombia, stayed for a month and a half to embrace the fear. And by the 28 days being there, I feel like, okay, I overcome this fear to be in my country. I love my country, and I'm be able to come back many times I want. So yeah, so thank you, Nancy, to be here. And I'm so excited, and I know a lot of people don't know you, and I want to tell us, who is Nancy Deborah Barrows?
Thank you. So this question always gets me because do I give you my bio? Do I give you who I am? So I'm gonna give you a little bit of both. As
Yeah.
Gloria said, I am was named one of the top 50 most impactful people of LinkedIn, and that happened less than a year on the platform. And I like that one for a number of reasons. Of course, it's an honor. It's voted on by peers, but to me, it shows everyone that you can have tremendous impact from day one. It's not about your numbers. It's not about all the things that get in our head. It's about showing up. It's about being real. It's about being relatable. It's about making people feel seen, heard, loved, and valued. And so to me, that's something we can all do. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. I am the co-host of two global award-winning live shows with Brian Schulman, who's in the comments. Thank you, Brian. We do What's Good Wednesday and Shout Out Saturday. And that's a place where we get to shine the spotlight on our guests. And our guests are people who come from our community and our audience. And everyone's welcome to come on and share what's going on for them so that they can be celebrated and, if needed, supported. I am soon to be a published author. I am part of a book series, a 4-book series. The book is called The Book of Influence. It's the first one in the series, and it's based on Dale Carnegie's book. I am a coach, as you said. I help people. I don't like coach so much, but like a Sherpa. I like Sherpa. I'm gonna take the journey with you and bring my perspective, which typically is helpful. I haven't journeyed your journey, so as I go through it with you, it's different eyes. So I can offer that to people, help them find their voice within, find out where these ideas came from, who planted that seed, and why do we keep watering them, and just find ability to take off any mask you're wearing and show up as you are and receive unconditional love and unconditional acceptance, which is what we all deserve. I am a dedicated and sometimes dramatic cat mama. I am a completely flawed human. I am showing up every day and sharing all parts of my journey. I insist on sharing what I call the ugly, snotty, unsexy pieces, because I know for sure if I was watching me today, I would feel like I had no clue what it was like, right? I wasn't the 20-year-old who, you don't see the 20-year-old who was broken beyond repair and didn't get out of bed except to go to therapy 3 times a week, who really would go to bed at night and say, well, I'm not going to take my own life, but if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I'd be fine with it. Or, tomorrow somebody's going to get a terminal cancer diagnosis and they want to live, right? So let me take it, let them go live. And so you don't see that, but I can show you in my everyday life where I continue to be human and struggle and have learning opportunities. So, people think, you said it earlier, like you don't just journey and get there. It's not like, oh, I've healed from my trauma. Here's my mental wellness. Here's the plaque hanging on the wall and I'm done. It's not that. It's a daily. In fact, it was funny
Yes.
earlier today. I was like, oh, I have my butterflies, about coming on and being with you and talking about my story. And yes, it's gotten so much easier, but the reality is I want to share this with people because even after you've done it for a while, it may feel scary. It may
Yes.
still feel odd and uncomfortable. And, and a lot of the time, once I start talking about it, it goes away completely. But for people to know, it's that, yeah, there are days that I don't get out of bed. And there are days where sharing my truth and my story is more challenging than others. And I want to remind people that even scared, even terrified, quite frankly, we are powerful. And so we can take that fear, as you said, and, sort of go like, no, I can pull power from within and I can conquer this fear and I can do things even though the fear is present. And when you do that, that's when you get the courage on the other side. So yeah, that's me. I'm a cat mom. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I am a speech language pathologist by training. I'm a whole lot of things. Mostly I'm human.
What a beautiful story. So Nancy, I talk about depression, anxiety, PTSD. What do you think about depression and anxiety?
I think they are insidious in the way they change our brain and our thinking. Like literally, I know for people who have not experienced depression, it's very hard to understand that I will, you know, stand in front of my sink and have a debate back and forth with myself to brush my teeth, like literally a fight in my head with myself that I
Yes.
need to do this, or to get in the shower, or canceling plans because like going out in the real world like hurts. Like it's just painful at times. And so for me it's insidious, and the fact that we are still so uncomfortable talking about it and uncomfortable being uncomfortable about talking about it, that it ends up being something that grows in the dark, and it grows because we're isolated. And for me,
Yes.
I had my first major depressive episode when I was 20 years old. And I dropped out of college and had to go home. And that's when I was in bed, except for therapy 3 times a week. And I'd love to say it was the one and only time, but it's not. To this day, I still struggle with my mood. I go through major depressive episodes. There are lots of days where the voices in my head are cruel, and really need my awareness to bring in my newly elected board, my healthy board members in my head. Um, and then every opportunity, every time, what people would think of as like a setback, for me, it's not. It's an opportunity to prove to myself that I have this bag of tools and these skills, and I know how to do this. Now, it might take me a day, it might take me a week, but I do know how to do this. And I'm presented with these learning opportunities. And in the end, and I'm not going to say like when I'm going through it, I'm like so happy that I'm learning in this moment in this way. But once I get through them, that's more reassurance for me that I'm strong. I know what to do. I know that I have made it through 100% of my worst days. And that's a record I plan to keep. And for most of us, I will say we don't do anything 100%. Again, talking about
Yeah.
brushing our teeth, like I know there's people listening who have gone to bed at least once without brushing your teeth, but
Of course.
surviving my worst days, that's a perfect track record. And that gives me history to draw on. It gives me strength to draw on, and it gives me um, the wisdom to know that while everything may seem terrible, um, there's something good coming.
Yes. I would say that depression for me is like a reset, like a period of moment of a tremendous sadness or whatever you feel, and for you to be in the dark to see what's going on in your life, and like you said, to come out from there stronger. And it is like it, I don't like to see depression like something bad. I always see depression like it's a moment for us to see ourselves, to go internally. But sometimes if we're not paying attention to that, we can go more of what we should. And there's a lot of people right now with chronic depression that they don't know how to get out from that. So for us to talk about that, yeah, we have periods of that. Thank God we have those periods and recognize that, and we have the tools to be able to come out. So what are your tools when you feel like that you are depressed and you have 2 3 days? What are the tools that you use to come out from there?
I am very big on words and words having power. I am a speech language pathologist of 20 plus years, so that's in my training, but it's also something I know for my brain and for all of our brains is my brain believes me. So I start to use things like, instead of I have to, I get to. I get to do this. I do a lot of journaling. I take care of myself. I sit and try and really understand, am I tired? Is my body physically tired, or is my brain telling me I need to go back to bed because of my depression? One of the things that helps me most, and it's really challenging to get yourself to do, is if I can help someone else. If I start helping someone else, it's outside of me, and it gives me a sense of worth, and it gives me a sense of purpose, and it makes me feel good. And if you can start to experience the feel good, that's a huge thing, because we can be in that place and nothing feels good. Talking to people, I have the privilege to have done a lot of therapy as well, and so I have someone that I can call if I need something on a more professional level than what my tools allow. I'd have all my clients make a list of the people that they're 100% honest and truthful with, and the first thing that I ask them is, "Are you on that list?" Because we need to be able to be Lisa, we need to be able to be honest with ourselves, as hard as that is. But it also, on that list, are people that you know you can call in your ugly, snotty, unsexy moments, and they're going to be with you and understand that it's doesn't define you. It's where you are right now, and that they can sit with you, right? They can honor the feelings you're having. And if you have those honest relationships over time, and you can let people know, I know I'm somebody who experiences depression. So before I end up depressed, a lot of my people, my friends know, like, hey, when I get depressed, this is my behavior. If you see that, please, like, I retreat, you won't hear from me, those kinds of things. If you see that, please reach out, because if you reach out to me, I will get back to you. But that
Right.
initiating is not something that I'm good at. So those are some of my tools. And anxiety is another one. Anxiety, um, gosh, depression and anxiety together, what a combination. I know so many of us experience that, but the anxiety of, things feeling so big all the time.
Yes.
It's exhausting, just as depression is. And being able to stop myself and say, is this thought true? Is this helpful? Is my reaction proportionate to the size of the problem in front of me? Yes or no? Those are a couple of things that really help me, to get grounded again. And I think a lot of that is for anxiety, for me to get grounded in the reality instead of what's happening in my head as I continue to grow it and my fears take over. It's one of those things, I hate being late. So if I'm running late, it's like, okay, 5 minutes. Is anything going to change if I'm 5 minutes late? And I will say to myself, well, the universe has me on this path for a reason. I'm hitting every red light for a reason. So the universe may be doing this because it's keeping me safe. And if I was able to go clearly through, there's an accident somewhere that I would have. And trying to reframe things in the positive helps me as well.
Yeah, you know what? I think about depression and anxiety. Like depression is excess of the past, and anxiety is the excess for the future. So
Mhm.
what I do mostly all the time is practice the present, but that make me feel like I'm living right now.
Mhm.
Whatever is right now. I don't want to think about the past because it already passed. And the past is very good to think about, because there's a lot of tools there for us to deal with the present. But the future, we don't know, and sometimes we worry so much about the future. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 year, 2 years. We don't know, and we always worry about that. So I try to always practice the present and be here, because like you said, I like what you said, your brain listens to you, and I like that what you just said.
It is. And it works. It believes us. So if you tell it negative things, it's going to trust you that those things are true. So really being mindful of what we're saying, and being in the present again, like that's hugely important. And I love that. Yes, I love the way you frame that. That's amazing, and I think it hits it right on the head. When I'm with people who are experiencing those things, or clients who have sort of had this and don't have tools yet, one of the first tools I teach them is look around, name 5 red things for me, or tell me 5 things you see. Because the second you do that, you are in the present. We
Yes.
bring ourselves back to the present. And that's a huge step of like, okay, what's happening? My nervous system gets a chance to calm down. My life is
Yes.
not at risk here, even though it feels like my fight or flight has gotten up, right? But it's not really what's happening in this moment. So if you're new to it and you need a quick something to do, those are great things. Name 5 things in your environment, 5 things that are a certain color.
So, Nancy, you have a powerful story, and I want you to tell us your story. I didn't even want to tell what is the story about, because I wanted you to let people to know that story from you. So, can you share your story?
Absolutely. And I will start by saying, anyone who's listening,
Yes.
receive it however you need to receive it. It may be triggering. It may bring up
Mhm.
things for you. It may bring up, I've had people get angry, disgusted. It's fine. I've had all of those feelings myself, and I don't want anyone judging themselves for how they feel. And when receiving my story, I tell people all the time, thank you for being angry, because I couldn't be. If I remained angry, I never would have healed. So thank you for being angry for me. If that's what it is, that's what it is. So most importantly, please don't be judging yourself about how you receive it. So I'll start with the big bomb, is that I was sexually abused by my grandfather until I was 16 years old. And it stopped because a mandated reporter found out, and it got thrown into the legal system, which I was certainly not ready for. Um,
Mm.
I had gone from so carefully guarding this secret as if my life depended on it, because that's what it felt like to me, to
Yeah.
having it unleashed like on everyone. It was, watching my parents deal with it, my brother deal with it, anyone that was around me, right, was now tainted by this, whereas before it was just me. So there was a lot going on in the beginning. And I will say, perhaps without knowing it, and I suspect that's the case, 2 critical things happened right at the beginning. One, I was at a summer program, and the director asked me if I wanted to tell my parents or if I wanted them to tell. And so, in a situation where I never had a choice, I never had control, they gave me back my narrative of saying, no, 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 I want to tell them. I'm going to make this choice. And then my parents being amazing. I was given the most amazing, most perfect parents for me. They received this news and they're far away from their daughter. And, you know, they asked, do you want to come home or do you want to stay? Now, a lot of parents would have swooped in and, this awful thing is happening and you're hearing about it and you want to go protect your child. And the only way you can protect them is to have them with you. And my parents, like I said, I don't even think they knew what a gift it was. They gave me the choice. So I did finish the program. I was happy and safe there. And to be pulled from something I was happy and safe, would have been another trauma. The trauma of having to go through the legal system when I got home was not fantastic by any means. I had court-ordered therapy. It was determined that I couldn't testify. And so a lot of it happened without me, which I'm grateful for. I truly don't believe that would have been additional trauma for me to have to recover from later. And I mentioned that I experienced my first major depressive episode at age 20, and that's because at age 20, I confronted my grandfather. And I flew to see him, and he wasn't there when I showed up. And so I had to wait for him. And, my anxiety was building and all
Of
of this stuff.
course.
And again, another choice. My dad said to me, we can leave. And I said no, because if I don't do it now, I'm never coming back. And so I had the opportunity to confront my grandfather. And it was supposed to be life altering, and it was just not in the way that I anticipated, because he did admit to the abuse. He admitted to one thing that when he had been inappropriate, as he put it. And it was something I didn't remember. And so this,
So Nancy, so he abused you until when you was 16 years old?
yes,
So when he started abusing you, since
it,
what age?
I'm going to say I have memories of about 4 years old. Yeah.
Wow,
It was a long time.
it's a long time.
It's a long time. Thankfully, you want to have the best of a terrible situation. I've been blessed in that way. My grandparents lived out of state, so it wasn't continuous, like, daily contact. What it was like intense periods of time where my world became unsafe, because they would come visit and stay with us for an extended amount of time. And so during those periods, that's when my world really became unsafe and unpredictable for me, and I had to get through them. But my core family was safe, so I had that reprieve. Um, so yeah, I confronted him, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm sitting there with this whole new problem, because he's telling me something that I don't remember, and it triggers in me, like, what don't I remember? How much is there? Do I need to know it all to heal? And, like, can I handle knowing it all? Like, can I handle, like, this one thing that I didn't know is totally shifting the ground beneath me. How would I do if I knew all of it? And luckily, it turns out that I didn't need to know all of it. But that really was a big, just, it opened up it's almost like when an earthquake opens it up and, like, the world swallowed me. And on top of it, I had somebody take responsibility, right? I had gone through therapy. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. And here's somebody who's taking responsibility. And the reality is that regardless, even though I'd never done anything wrong, and somebody's saying, yes, this is mine to take, I still had to deal with all the effects of having been abused, all the trauma effects, all of the different pieces and parts that I was going to have to go through over the course of a lifetime. Again, I did therapy on and off
Yes.
for years, and there were points in my life where I didn't know, as you said, what was coming next. I didn't know what was going to come up for me or be able to work on it beforehand. And so there I was, right? Every step of the way, there would be something new, and I'd roll my sleeves back up. And I've always been lucky, because I've had great therapists locally to me that I can reach out to. And, as soon as I disclosed the abuse, I very quickly became a very restrictive eater at first.
Okay.
And then for many years was anorexic. And there was always a piece of it that was body image, because I never was thin enough. I get that. But for me, I wanted to disappear. Again, there was a voice inside of me, and I'm so lucky to have this voice that's always guided me, that's like, no, you're not checking out, because there's so much more for you ahead. This is what you're going to do. And at the bare minimum, even when I was in, like, college, like, you're going to go to class, because there's a future for you. But I wanted to disappear. And the second part was, why would I nourish and nurture a body that betrayed me? And this is so hard for people to hear, but I think it's important to say, because if you've had the experience, I think there's a lot of people who sit in the shame of this. Is, my body did exactly what it was programmed to do, beautifully made to do exactly what it did, which was sexual touch, pleasure. The problem was the context and who, and the not wanting it and not choosing it. And so there was so much to untangle there. There was so much to untangle with trust. There was so much to untangle with trusting myself,
Right.
and knowing I can make good decisions to support myself, undoing habits of, people pleasing, in the terms of, if everybody else is happy, because this is what I did with my grandfather. If you're happy, take whatever you want, because if you're happy, then you're happy, and everything's going to be okay, right? I'll survive on breadcrumbs. I don't need a voice. I don't matter here, because the only way I'm going to survive is if you're happy. I struggled in school because I had trauma brain, and people did not understand, because they did not know what was happening. All of,
Trauma brain.
yeah. So what I consider trauma brain is that you're in fight or flight, and your brain
Okay.
stays there, and it stays overly bathed in these chemicals that signal danger, danger, danger. And so when you're in those moments, you don't think. We're not designed to think in those moments. We're designed to survive. We don't have the
Correct.
capacity to learn something new when you're running away from a dinosaur. Like, it's just not. And so that was one of the things as I went to through school, having a really hard time trying to absorb things and being told by a lot of people like, you're capable, you're not trying, you need to apply yourself, and really wanting to scream at the world like, I'm working harder than anyone in this room to get through the door in the morning. Like, you want me to now
Right.
learn fractions? Like, come on. Like, the fact that I get up every day is a victory for me. And so I feel so blessed that during the pandemic, I did not experience the worst of it. And I spent all this time with me, and I got to know myself and my story in a very different way. And for the first time in my life, I was 47. I met the real Nancy Deborah Barrows, and I really liked her. And that was new for me. And I decided in that moment that I was going to take off my mask and I was never going to put it back on. And I would deal with whatever that meant, whatever that meant in terms of my job, my personal life. You don't like it, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you I thank people for showing up in a way that made it so clear that I don't need to put my energy there because I have limited energy and I'm navigating all this stuff.
Right.
And that's how the Radiating Real movement came about. It was like, no, let's take off our masks. We're all out here living life. We know it's hard, but we don't want to talk about it. And so we're quite
Yes.
literally killing one another. People are looking at content and that internal report card, and they're never going to get there and they can't match up. How about we talk about what's really happening and let each other exhale? And that's what I was doing. And that's what people were responding to. And even in my marriage, I was married 16 years before I was sitting in a therapist's office, and she said to me, you realize you've recreated the emotional dynamics of your abuse relationship, right?
Of
And I was like,
course.
I have not. Of course, I've been in therapy for years. There's no way I did that. And she starts ticking off thing after thing. And I won't say the words that I exactly said, but I cursed and was like, done how after all the years of therapy, after all the hard work, how did I end up here? I was so angry at myself
Right.
in that moment. But I share it because, like we said, it's a journey. And there are going to be things that come up along the way that we didn't have to deal with before. And that at any given moment, once I had the awareness of it, I made a change. And I went back to putting me first. And I will say the therapist that I was working for, she's here in Los Angeles, Jessica Oifer, was amazing because I went to her and I said, I'm trying to save my marriage. That's why I'm here. And she's like, no, you're not. You're here to work on you and see how your marriage responds to that.
Exactly.
And it was the first time anyone ever gave me permission to do that. That was like mind blowing to me. Like, no, you're not. You're here to work on you, and you're going to see what happens with the rest of it. You're going to just stop hiding. When I started therapy, I used to have to sit behind the sofa of my therapist's office at 16 years old because I couldn't tolerate looking at her, but I couldn't tolerate her looking at me. I was convinced like she thought that I was disgusting and all the thoughts that I had about myself. I realized I was paying her. She had to listen. She couldn't run out of the room. But, all of this goes to say that it's a process and it's not always pretty. And it's, like I
No.
say, ugly, snotty, unsexy. And there are ups and downs, and there's light and dark. And if you allow yourself to be human through it, and you allow yourself the gift of moving forward, getting through it, I always say it's already happened. Everything we want has already happened. We're just catching up. And the only way to do that is to keep moving forward. And so I tell my story for people who can't yet. I tell my story for people who are in the middle of it. I tell my story for the people who, you know, have had all these thoughts in their minds and thought that they're a freak and weird and messed up. And here, you're hearing it from me, you're hearing it from someone else. And we allow people to exhale. And I think that's a huge gift. And it's a gift to me that my experience can be helping someone else.
Yeah, Nancy, the point is that we reproduce what we learn when we growing up.
Mhm.
And if you was exposed to an environment of abuse, of course you're gonna reproduce that in your adult life. And some I like you asked the question, but why me? I've been doing all this therapy, and why is this happening again, and why is still on? Because again, like you said, you was not aware, and that happened also to me. I was also doing the same thing, and when I was kidnapped, like surviving, I did have Stockholm syndrome. So all my partners after that, I was attached to them by Stockholm syndrome, and was always like pleasing, like you said, pleasing, and like, hey, I'm here. I want you to love me. But when I said I'm here, I want you to love me. It was too much. It was too much because we are too emotional, supposedly very unstable, and people don't need to understand our traumas, but people needs to have a little bit of compassion and understand what the other person went through. But like you said, those people that went in through our lives was the biggest masters of our lives, to be able, in my case, at my 50 years old, to remove the mask, like you, and say, hey, this happens to me. I went through a lot. I still processing my stuff. It's not like overnight. And I would never, like, I promised to myself a long time, I would never like, why me, why me, why this is for me, why all the things happen to me. No, it happens to me for a reason, and I'm gonna use this experience to empower other people. But it took me a freaking a long time
Oh,
to
yeah.
be able to show, to say the story. And it happens to me like a 47, just like you. I was afraid to talk about my story, and plus what my family is gonna say about, because this is a secret and we don't want anybody to know about it. And I said, No, I went through a lot and I survived, and I'm right now helping other people through my life. And that's it. So I'm grateful for all the experience I went through. And a lot of people can say, oh, that's crazy. No, I had this no choice. You cannot change
Right.
the past. It's what it is.
And
And
if you
I'm
try to
grateful.
outrun it, which I did, I moved 3,000 miles away from New York to California to try and outrun it. It doesn't work. You bring your
It
story
doesn't
with you.
work.
And, it's funny because secrets inherently tell us there's something shameful, there's something wrong. And so, families wanting to keep things secret, the message, rather than we're trying to keep you safe, is actually like,
Yeah.
this is shameful and you need to hide this. Um, in which makes you feel like you've done something wrong. One of my favorite pieces of my story, and I so appreciate you continuing to share yours, because there are not a lot of people who have had your experience that are comfortable and have done the work. And maybe there's people who've done the work and they just don't want to talk about it, but you're willing to. And so that's so important. And you talked about family, right?
Yeah.
Talked to, I had talked about my abuse, in my life. What I hadn't done was go live on LinkedIn in front of, granted, not the nearly 1 billion people weren't all going to hear it and see it, but
Right.
I gave my story a life outside of me where people would hear it and I wouldn't be there to see their reaction or mitigate with my words whatever was going on. And so I did that, and I had not done it before because I work in the public schools. And people have ideas about people who have been abused who choose to work with children. And I thought, you
Yes.
know what? I'm part of the problem, right? If I subscribe to the same thing, like that's my fear because this is what people think. How am I ever going to make it so that no, actually, while it does happen, it's not necessarily the rule. I'm here because I've had trauma. I'm here because I understand what it's like. I'm here because I want to help kids have their voices, a speech language pathologist, right? There are all the right reasons. And I finally decided, you know what? I'm willing to give that up. If something happens and my career crumbles and that's what happens and I've helped one person, then I'm okay with that. And my parents, I never checked with my family beforehand. Like, how would you feel about this? Um, and I remember calling my parents afterwards and having two really great, very different conversations with my mom and my dad. And so I happened to speak to my mom first. And I said, I hope it's kind of too late for me to ask, but I want you to know this is what I did. And, just how are you okay with that kind of thing? And my mom was just cheerful. And she said, I have to tell you, there was a point that I was afraid you weren't going to make it. And my mom never shared that with me.
Of
And she
course.
shared with me, like going through the process, this moment where she saw me just in tears and curled up. I'm 5'8". She said I was curled up into this tight little ball. And it happened to be during one of the court ordered therapy sessions. And that was so hard for her to see. But she said what was even more painful was when he said it was time to go, I stood up and I was fine. Like I was the girl that she knew. And she said, gosh, you had so much pain inside. And I never saw it as your mom. And feeling that, being in that moment with you in that pain, I was worried you weren't going to make it. Like I felt it. I didn't know how you were going to make it. So that was my mom's, and it sparked this really great conversation between us. And my dad, I said the same thing to him, and he said, you know what, if people want to talk to me about it and say, hey, your daughter's out there talking about sexual abuse, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say, yeah, that's my kick-ass daughter. And so again, I was given the right breast family for me. And I know that not everybody's disclosure is met with kindness and caring and empathy and understanding. And a lot of people's first message is shut up, you're lying, I don't want to ever hear about it again.
Yeah.
And so like I said, I tell my story for people who can't yet. I use what I've learned with people who are feeling, but maybe they didn't go through what I went through, and everybody's trauma, there's no scale of like mine's worse than yours is worse than mine. Trauma occurs when our body is overloaded and we
Yeah.
go into a trauma response. And that can happen at any time for any one of us for any reason. We've all got
Yes.
our threshold. And so it doesn't matter what your trauma was. We're not comparing trauma. What we're looking at is that what happens with trauma is it leaves behind this constellation of behaviors and thoughts and just a whole bucket of yuck.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same for all of us. And so I can bring my experience to someone who hasn't had my experience, and still help them through something, still be effective, still understand. As far as PTSD goes, when I was going through this years ago, PTSD wasn't really even a thing. It was
No.
maybe first coming up and being talked about. So we didn't talk about that. So the different types of treatment for PTSD weren't available. The way we might medicate differently for PTSD wasn't available to me. And so I didn't get some of those treatments until this Jessica Weifer, who helped me with like some of this stuff that I couldn't tap into, to really clear it. And, for me, and the thing, there are certain things that I think with our PTSD, like other things, we have to learn to embrace and look at and love for what they are. For me, I don't sleep well because that's the one time where I can't reassure my brain that I'm safe, right? I've done a lot of work in other places, but I don't sleep well. And it's not the most fun thing in the world. I will admit that. And
Right.
I tend to be tired, but you know what? What I can do is thank my brain for taking care of me when I can't take care of myself. I can thank my brain for making sure that when I can actually rest and everything that needs to happen will happen. My heart will beat, my lungs will breathe, and just find some appreciation for it. There's a lot of other things that, I've worked on. I used to have the biggest startle reflex. And I had behaviors where I would have to sit with facing the door, or if I was getting dressed, even in my own home, like I had to have my back to the wall and facing things that my executive board had used to help me survive. And I was so grateful for, but I had to celebrate them for the job they had done and let them retire and go hang out on a beach somewhere with a drink with an umbrella and let them know if I needed them, I knew where to find them. But those things weren't serving me anymore. And, you know, I talk about this and I sit here and I seem like I have myself together. And, I want to let people know, like, I lock myself out on a regular basis of my house. Like, I don't have it all together. I forget things
Right.
easily. Again, there's days I stay in my pajamas all day, and sometimes it's more than a day. I fight with myself to brush my teeth. And that's part of being human. And it's part of being someone who's living life, and it's
Yeah.
part of my trauma that I take with me and, you know, get to learn from every day and get to experience so that I understand things better and I can bring that to other people. Um,
So Nancy, do you forget your grandfather? You
I do.
what kind of relation you have with him now?
He's passed away,
Okay.
and I always thought my main identity would be someone who survived childhood sexual abuse. There was no way I was getting rid of that. That was the stain that was going to constantly stay on me. And honestly, until I started talking about it on LinkedIn, I hadn't thought about it in a really long time. It just wasn't something that was in my daily. What's in my daily is my mood, but not the eating disorder and not the stuff related to sexual abuse. So I don't ever actually remember ever hating my grandfather. And I can't explain that. I
Do you feel affection for him even he was doing what he was doing?
no,
It was your grandfather?
it was confusing because he was supposed to love me and I loved him. And this was very confusing to me because this isn't how anyone else loved me. And this isn't how I felt when anyone else loved me. So I think that was there. But as time went on, I regarded him sort of like a piece of furniture. He's there. He has no bearing on my life, no impact. I'm not, when he said he admitted to things.
Right.
Again, this voice in my head, I'm like, I'm not giving this man another minute of my life. And that's why I dropped out of college and was like, no, therapy. First of all, I couldn't have stayed in college, quite frankly. I was, major depressive episode. There's no way I could have continued, but
Right, right.
I wasn't going to give him a second more of my life. He had taken so much from me that he didn't deserve any of my energy. And for some reason, that was a switch I was able to flip easily. And I know that's not for everyone. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of complex emotion that goes around, the person who inflicted the trauma on you, who created the situation. And I, again, really grateful. I was able to say, nope, not anymore. You don't get that. This energy
But
doesn't hit.
do you have like with him the last conversation to say what, like, I forgive you, like a face to face, I forgive you? Do you have that chance?
No, I mean, when I confronted him and he admitted to something, I said, thank you. Thank you for admitting that. Thank you for telling me. But he also wanted to talk in a separate room. And when he wanted to talk in a separate room, I said, that's fine. But when we come back, I'm going to tell everybody, I don't keep secrets anymore. That's not something that happens anymore. And so I did thank him there, and we came back together and had a conversation with my parents and the whole thing. And we, we, there's more light on it. And so the more I talked about it and the more people who knew and the more people really sort of thankfully embraced my story and me, the less power it had, repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly. And
Right.
honestly, the person that I fought most with about all of it was myself.
So Nancy, and this grandfather was your mother or your father's side?
My mother's grandfather. And I found out years later that I have an older female cousin, and she's older by quite a bit. And he had been abusing her. And one day she said, no, like that's the end of it. And he moved on to me. I was the next in the pecking order or whatever. And when I asked her, because I asked her if anything had happened, she originally said no and called me back months later and was like, I have been processing the fact that because I said no, it became you. And, I didn't even think of it. I didn't even think to protect you or think. I said, listen, you're thinking with your grown-up brain. Your adult brain is telling your kid what it should have done. You did exactly what you should have done. You need to survive. You needed to stop, and you needed that to be the end of it. Like, it wasn't your job to protect me. It was his job, and he was the one. He's completely responsible. There's other like family history where my mom doesn't have any memories, but I also understand that she maybe won't ever have memories. Maybe it didn't happen.
Right.
I don't know. And there's other like people in the family that you can sort of start looking at generational trauma. It maybe wasn't exactly the same, but you can see what was happening in hindsight. But it takes the first person to shine the light on it and say, hey, this is what's happening and it's got to stop before you can look back and go, oh, wow, look what we have been passing. Look at our family's legacy here. There's other
Yes.
great things, but our family legacy is to pass along this trauma and this hurt, and we continue to do it. And one person talking about it can change all of that. And I was given the gift to be the person for my family to remove that from.
So this grandfather was your biggest master of your life, for you to master your own life and to be able to be empowering and be successful and the woman that you are today.
In a lot of ways, yes, because the lessons I learned from the hard, but
Yeah.
I can't discount the fact that my core family, I've learned so much from my mom and dad. My dad is the world's most forgiving person, and I try to hold myself to that standard every day and not hold on to things. My mom is a fierce lioness, and I get that from her. People I love, you don't mess with the people I love. The love of family and gathering family, the value of knowledge, the knowing that I can do whatever I want and that I will be supported. That all came from my core family. He didn't
Yes.
take that away.
Right.
Um, and because I've done the work, what he left me has become something that is empowering as much as any of the other things that I've learned in my life.
Wow, Nancy, what a story. Wow, thank you for sharing that story in my show. It's the very first story of a rape in my show. And like I said in the beginning, it was a little bit hectic for me because I do have one of my members of my family went through like that. But in her case was like they give her something in the drink and they numb her and they abuse her. But rape is rape. It doesn't matter what it is, but that brings a lot of damage into a person. And thank you for sharing this, and thank you for helping so many people to open their lives and into, like you said in the beginning, you are for those people that are waking up, are in the middle, or that they don't know what to do. So thank you to be the voice for those people, and I'm so glad that you are here today. We are about to wrap it up, and I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Can you give us today a word or a message for the people that are thinking to take their lives away today?
I think for me, it's reminding people that they are seen, heard, loved, and valued. And if your brain is lying to you and telling you that that's not true, that you won't be missed, that you're not adding value, first of all, if you're in the United States, you can call 988 and be anonymously connected with a qualified counselor. But I think for everyone who's thinking along those lines, if you can take a breath and realize that in that breath, you made it to the next moment that you didn't think you were going to make it to, and take another breath, and that's another moment you didn't think you were going to make it to, and just stress the importance of sharing how you're feeling with people, and knowing that as human beings we want to see one another succeed. We're built for empathy, we're built to support one another, and most of all, you're not alone, no matter how that feels. And again, I just keep telling myself that everything that I want is out there, and I just need to keep going to get it, and reminding myself that I have survived 100% of my most difficult days, and that if you're thinking things that your brain is not being honest with you, please, 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 talk to someone first.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. And I want to add something else, that if you are listening what just Nancy say today, I hope you can turn around your life. And if you do, you will be an inspiring person for all the people that are thinking the same what you're thinking today. And we need people just like you, like turn around your life and be able to tell your story to transform other people. So, Nancy, thank you so much to be in Unbreakable Life with Glory, the bilingual podcast. And can you tell where people can find you, what exactly you do, where they can listen to you, and everything?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for entrusting this topic, um, for me to share with you. I deeply appreciate that. So where can you find me? I'm a LinkedIn gal, if that wasn't obvious. So you can find me there, Nancy Deborah Barrows. It's there on your screen. I'm happy to have a conversation. I love connecting with people. So go to calendly.com/Nancy Barrows and, sign up. Let's have a conversation. What do I do? Well, I love co-hosting the two global award-winning live shows with Brian Schulman, and they are really What's Good Wednesday is about what's good, what's going on in your life that's good, and shout out the good you see in the world. And that can be seen on his LinkedIn channel at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we do Shout Out Saturday, where we intentionally shout out and bring attention to the people who have made a positive impact in our life that week, and that's 9 a.m. on Saturdays. And the work I do is one of those places where, for people who feel like they've tried everything and they really feel stuck, I can't say there's a perfect avatar, but if you're feeling stuck and you want, like, you're ready, it's my honor and privilege to watch people discover their true selves through the process. And I also do a bunch of, hey, there it is, yay,
Yeah.
through Voice Your Vibe, where I am the Chief Engagement Officer. We are offering all sorts of workshops and masterminds on how to harness the power of LinkedIn and to really get everything out of this amazing platform, where there's a huge community, and using live to connect with our audiences. So that's another thing that I'm really passionate about. Of course, we get to bring people together, and if I can help people find one another and connect with one another, again, I'm pretty privileged. If you can see the family that showed up for me today, which I am so grateful for, and I thank them for, and that's all because
Thank you.
we care about one another genuinely, and we make one another feel seen, heard, loved, and valued. And we're there if you need support, and we're there to celebrate. And we're all going through life, living life in a very real way together. And so we have this beautiful, brave space, safe space, I feel like you enter into, and everybody's supporting you, but you're the one getting vulnerable. Whereas our community thrives with brave space, where we're all going to do it together. Nobody's the one person who's going to, stand out and put themselves in that scary, risky, vulnerable place alone. It's never going to happen alone.
Yeah, thank you so much. There are so many people that love you. See that? Melanie Costa, she said, love you, Nancy. There's a lot of message I couldn't put all of them. Like was like, oh my God.
I'll have to go back and look. I am so incredibly blessed. Through LinkedIn, I found a community that I didn't know I had, and a family I didn't know I was missing, truly.
Awesome. So Nancy, thank you so much. I will remove you from the studio and I'm gonna close my show. And if you can wait for me a little bit, it would be nice and we can have the last chat in private.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And thank you to everyone listening. And be brave, be bold, and know even fearful, you're powerful.
Is what it is. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Well, wow, what a powerful story. It's a story like I didn't know how to talk about it, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna let her to talk about this story. And it was very powerful to be able to overcome that and keep going. Like we all keep going. And trauma is a trauma. It doesn't matter how big or small it is, it's a trauma. And you have to find a way to use your tools, to not, find a way to know yourself, to be able to transform and transcend those traumas, to have a happier life and to have a peaceful life. Because to live with a life with a full of problems and don't know what to do is very, very heavy. And life is already challenged enough to be able to not to keep going, like now being aware of what we need to do to feel better. Anyway, thank you so much for everybody to be here in Unbreakable Life with Glory. This is Gloria Goldberg, and thank you so much for all of you to be here, and for the new people, thank you to be here. And I'm so excited to be alive and living in beautiful this world. Well, before I go, I always say something very important, that I love you. Thank you so much. Bye bye.